Good evening, I'm Duncan Golostani. Firefighters have warned that a wildfire in Surrey could spread again at any moment and called for people to stay away from the area. The fire started on Chobham Common on Friday, eventually covering 500 hectares and leading to some residents being evacuated from their houses. Today, they told us about the terrifying moments the flames almost reached their homes. Firefighters say that because of the hot weather, they remain on high alert. Our correspondent Simon Harris reports.
It's normally a beauty spot, but Chobham Common has been ravaged by wildfire, leaving a moonscape of ash and charred trees. Neighbours Andy and Bernard watched and took pictures as the flames came alarmingly close to their homes on the edge of Sunningdale.
It was about 200 feet from the house, but the flames were very high. And obviously the flames were travelling in the oil within the trees, so we were fearful of it crossing the road, coming to the house. So we were actually hosing the hedge down.
My family had packed overnight cases and we had to put our pets into the local vets for overnight stays.
Fire crews used a drone with a heat-seeking camera to guide them. Around 90 firefighters spent the weekend trying to tame the inferno after the heat wave created a perfect storm.
They are, in their very nature, unpredictable. On Saturday afternoon we had the conditions, or approaching the conditions, with 30 degrees of heat, 30 kilometres of wind and above 30% humidity, which is the perfect combination for an uncontrollable wildfire.
The wildfire threatened luxury homes in the stockbroker belt. More than 150 people had to move out.
The smoke was coming from over where those trees are, over there.
Colin Birch was among the evacuees.
It looked pretty bad actually, and then the police came, put up a cordon, and then the next minute we were told to evacuate the house, which we did, and then we came back last night, but we're not quite sure whether it's going to happen again.
There's still a danger the fire could reignite. 4 miles of high-pressure hose have been laid, effectively a mobile water main, capable of delivering 7,000 litres a minute. For as long as this hot spell lasts, the fire crews will need to be here just in case. But there is a chance that when the weather breaks later this week, it will bring thunderstorms. And for the fire crews, that rain can't come soon enough. No one yet knows how the fire started. From experience, the firefighters wouldn't be surprised if a barbecue or a cigarette butt was to blame. But whatever caused it, more than 500 hectares of much-used open space has been torched. Simon Harris, ITV News, Chobham.
Good evening. It's been 27 years since Stephen Lawrence was murdered in a racist attack in Eltham. There have been inquests, prosecutions and countless reviews and reports during those 3 decades, but not the one thing Stephen's parents have fought tirelessly to get: all his killers brought to justice. There is now even less chance of that happening. The Metropolitan Police today revealed there are no further lines of inquiry and the active investigation is over. Stephen's father said he was disappointed but not surprised, and that the case would never be closed for him. His mother Doreen said, "While the Metropolitan Police have given up, I never will." Our correspondent Simon Harris reports.
The murder of Stephen Lawrence by a racist gang in Eltham has haunted the Met for almost 3 decades. A botched investigation and missed opportunities to collect evidence meant the force failed to catch all but 2 of his killers. Today, the Commissioner called time on the latest attempt to find fresh evidence.
I do regret that we have not got to the stage where all the people who were involved in that dreadful attack have been brought to justice. And I recognise that mistakes were made in the early days, and we've said so, I've said so, on a number of occasions. And so, of course, that is a matter of regret.
Stephen was stabbed to death as he waited for a bus with his friend Dwayne Brooks. Detectives identified 5 suspects: brothers Neil and Jamie Acortt, their friends Luke Knight, Gary Dobson and David Norris. They were called to give evidence at an inquest but refused to answer. The police investigation and the way the Lawrence family was treated led to an official government inquiry which concluded the Met was institutionally racist.
Doreen and Neville Lawrence were not prepared to take no for an answer. They weren't prepared to accept excuses. They had seen how badly the police had handled the case and they wanted justice. They didn't want just the police brought to account, they wanted a proper investigation as well.
I now want people to remember him as a bright, beautiful young man.
But the Lawrences would have to wait until 2012 before seeing 2 of Stephen's killers in the dock at the Old Bailey. Gary Dobson and David Norris were found guilty. No other members of the gang have ever been convicted. After 27 years, 5 major investigations and 17 internal reviews, Scotland Yard has run out of leads. 2 of Stephen's killers are in jail, but it looks as if the others have got away with it, and there's now little or no chance of them being brought to justice. Stephen's mother Doreen, now a Labour peer, said in a statement, "I am truly disappointed that those others who were equally responsible for my son's racist killing may not be brought to justice. I am very sad that a line has now been drawn into the investigation and that it is now in an inactive phase." His father Neville said, "I am disappointed to hear this news but not surprised. With the announcement today that the investigation has become inactive, I am conscious that the case can never be closed for me." The Met Commissioner said despite the decision to end the current investigation, the case would be reviewed from time to time.
Simon, you've been covering this since the murder back in the early 90s. Do you think there's any hope of any further leads, any further convictions?
Well, in her statement, Stephen's mother said she would never give up, and it's worth remembering that without Doreen and Neville's determination, we probably wouldn't have anyone in jail for this killing. But realistically, this does seem to draw a line under the criminal investigation for now. What might change that, as the Commissioner pointed out, is if newer evidence emerges, or perhaps some new scientific technique which might unlock forensic clues, or if somebody with a secret, someone who knows something, or a guilty conscience decides to break their silence and come forward. But in this case, that's never happened.
OK, Simon, thank you.
Next, he was an innocent man murdered in a case of mistaken identity. Dean Edwards was walking home through a park in Penge after having drinks with friends when he was shot in the back of the head. Police believe this was a targeted attack, but he was not the target. His killers got the wrong man. With Dean's family, devastation at the loss of the man they describe as a big softie. Our correspondent Simon Harris reports.
It had been a good night. Dean Edwards is on his way home after drinking with friends at 3 pubs at Penge in southeast London. It's just after midnight and he's alone as he walks down the far pavement before turning into Betts Park. But moments later, the 43-year-old was dead, murdered in the park by a gunman who may have mistaken him for someone else. Dean Edwards was killed by a single shot to the back of the head. It's what detectives normally think of as a gangland-style execution. But in this case, one where the killer got the wrong victim. Today, Dean's daughter Holly, flanked by her sister and her mum, read out a statement as the family tried to make sense of what happened a month ago.
Our dad was a friendly, bubbly and loving person. He was the best dad that we could have ever asked for and was an amazing granddad to our children. This last month without him has been the hardest time of our lives.
Dean's body was found just yards from a park entrance. At that time of night, it would have been so dark his killer probably couldn't see his face, lending weight to the theory of mistaken identity.
There's nothing that we have found that makes us suggest that Dean has had a row with anyone or had a disagreement with anyone. Dean had had a night out with friends and had enjoyed himself. There's no one that we can find that says a bad word about Dean. He was loved by everyone he knows.
Dean's family are at a loss to understand why anyone would want to kill him.
We were heartbroken. The night it happened, we came down and we just expected him to jump up and say it's all a joke. That was Dean. We're like zombies at the minute, just wanting someone to come forward. We need closure.
Dean Edwards was shot with a 9mm pistol. The police are focusing their investigation on local criminals who may be armed. He was one of 18 people murdered in London in July. In 4 of the killings, guns were used. Simon Harris, ITV News, Penge.
Next, London's mayor wants the government to follow Paris and make masks mandatory in all public outdoor places. Sadiq Khan spent the morning in the West End hearing the devastating effects of the lockdown on shops and businesses. Our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
Appearances can be deceptive. Oxford Street's pavements might look busy, but there are nowhere near enough shoppers to keep businesses afloat. Coronavirus is causing a crisis in the West End, and the mayor thinks masks might be part of the answer. He wants the government to consider making it mandatory for shoppers to wear face coverings, even in the open air in some streets.
I think we should be exploring the use of face coverings in the parts of London that need a bigger footfall. Oxford Street and the West End is one part of London. Clearly, we've seen a big drop here.
Earlier this week, Paris made face masks compulsory in some tourist hotspots, including Montmartre and along the banks of the River Seine.
I think we're starting to get used to it.
It's not very consistent. It's just common sense.
But are Londoners ready to embrace the Parisian way of doing things?
I'd have no problem with it whatsoever if it brings people back into London. We just did a tour of London on a bus, and we've been horrified that there was no one outside the Tower of London. It's scary.
I definitely don't think you should be wearing masks in the street. I want to see people's faces. I want to see people smiling.
I don't mind wearing one, really.
I don't really mind wearing them either.
For people who can't really breathe all that well, or they're having a long walk, you do get out of breath. And at my age, I do get out of breath. And I think, thank God I don't have to wear a mask.
Shops, restaurants, coffee shops and bars in the West End are struggling to attract customers. Some, perhaps many, will go bust. The West End has been hit by the double whammy of people working from home and foreign tourists staying away. Add to that social distancing rules, and it's easy to see why business is down by 2/3. But it's debatable whether a new mask rule would make shoppers more confident about coming back.
Some people would feel it's really safe, make them feel more secure perhaps. Others, I think it would put them off. So if I'm honest, other cities are doing that, as we know, and so therefore as people travel about, they'll get more used to it.
Sadiq Khan has written to the Prime Minister saying the West End is in need of urgent support from the government and it should explore whether compulsory face coverings in busy open-air spaces might increase public confidence.
And Simon, some new figures on how many of us have had the virus.
Yes, a lot of people wonder if they might have had the disease early on in a mild form but got over it. Well, now researchers at Imperial College in London, who've been sending out home testing kits to see if people have the antibodies, have concluded that 13% of Londoners, that's more than 1 million people, have had the virus. And that's far higher than any previous estimate. Also today, the government is having another go at launching a test and trace app. Like the previous failed attempt, it'll be trialled on the Isle of Wight, but also in the East London borough of Newham.
We are the most diverse borough in the whole of the country, but we're also a very young borough. We have 38% of our resident population that are under the age of 24, and we also have a real appetite amongst our communities, be they from ethnic minorities, young or old, for trying new technologies.
Well, the new app boasts several features. If you've been near any other app user who's tested positive, you'll get a notification. You can also use the app then to book your own test. It has a countdown clock telling you when you can come out of self-isolation. It also has a QR code which you can use, or a system where you can scan a QR code in a shop or a restaurant or a place of worship, so you don't have to fill in your name and contact details with a pen and paper.
OK, Simon, thank you very much.